I'm working on Edyta Sitar's quilt, and it's called Flea Market Treasure Quilt from the Scrappy Firework Quilt book. And I wanted to show you how to make accurate quadrants. It takes 8 of these quadrants, and if you're not exactly at a 45 degree, it's not going to come all together. So I thought I'd give you some hints and tips on how to get those perfect. So I've cut my strip sets, and you might want to refer back to getting a perfect cut video so that they're all exactly the right size. We want to finish with a 10.5-inch strip set. The other thing is go back and refer to how to figure out your 1/4 inch on your machine. That's another video that you can look and see using your little strip sets how to get that perfect 1/4, or how to know where that fabric needs to sit on your sewing machine underneath the foot so that you get that perfect 1/4. So I'm going to go ahead and start sewing my strip sets. And what's important here is that you not only offset it, but if you're stitching from the top to the bottom in one direction, by flipping, when you get ready to sew your next strip set, by flipping the direction, your fabrics, if they've slid, will adjust themselves. So again, it has to be such an accurate 1/4 and such an accurate cut, or else the 45 is not going to work. So let's go ahead and sew our strip sets together. Don't forget to start with your starter piece and feed that fabric right in. And I'm going to stitch all the way down. I have a 1/4 inch foot on my machine, and my fabric is sitting right underneath that foot. You'll notice that I don't have my fabrics pinned together. I find for me it works best if I'm working with a long strip to not pin that, but I encourage you to pin if that's what works for you. And I'm going to take it down all the way. Now I like to sew everything in pairs. It keeps me balanced. Instead of sewing one strip to another strip to another strip to another strip, I kind of like to do 2 strips together, 2 strips together, and then take those 4 strips and sew them in the opposite direction. So I'm going to go ahead and sew another pair together, and then I'll show you how to go in the opposite direction. All right, I've got 2 strip sets together, and I'm going to go ahead and take these to the ironing board and give it a good press. I like to press my strips as I go instead of sewing them all together and then pressing. I find that there's less stretch if I do it this way, and I get a better press, or a flatter seam, if you will. So I'm going to take it to the ironing board, and I'll be right back. So I want to show you this nice little gadget that I found. It's called the Strip Stick, and it's from Bab Enterprises. And it just helps. It's a nice little pressing bar to lay my strip, and then I can keep that seam nice and flat, nice and open. And when I'm working with lots of strips, I like to press my seam open instead of in one direction. This way, the bulk of the seam is going to be evenly distributed. So there's a pressing hint so that we're not stretching out our seams. Because if I were to set my seam and then press that seam out, the possibility of stretching that is a little higher. So let's go ahead and just lay it over our bar and open that seam and press that seam flat. And you'll notice that I am using a little bit of steam today with my batiks. Just be very careful not to stretch your fabrics out. And now I'm ready to sew these two guys together. So let's go back to our sewing station. Okay, so now I'm ready to sew the two units together. And like I said earlier, we want to go in the opposite direction. So I know that I've sewn these two in this direction, so I'm going to flip my strips and sew in this direction. Again, offset that strip and see how nicely that is sitting right on top of each other, and I can feel my my seams almost nesting with each other. So any sliding that happened when I was sewing in one direction will be offset now since I'm going in the opposite direction. And you want to do this with all of your strip sets. I'm going to go ahead and finish it up, and in our next video I'll show you how to size up the 45 and how to get those cut.